It's time for your Low Country Real Estate Market Update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
It's the best of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Good morning, Charleston. Welcome to another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I am your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. If this is your first time tuning into this show, let me give you an idea of what you're in store for. This is a show designed to help you better understand the process of buying, selling, and investing in real estate, help you tap into what's happening in our market right now, whether that be national, regional, or local news that affects you, the homeowner or potential homeowner or investor or potential investor, so that when it comes time for you to do something in real estate, buy, sell, or invest in a home, you're an informed consumer. It's an educational program that also relies on my experience, somebody that's been in real estate here for the past 15 years, sold over 1,000 properties, been in the top 1% of agents every year for the past decade. I relay those experiences and those stories with you to help you better understand what's happening right now, how this market is changing. What you did 10 years ago is going to be different from what's going to happen this year if you decide to sell, so on and so forth. So we do own and operate one of the top teams here in town for real estate. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, we'd love the opportunity to talk with you off air and see if we can help. My number is 843-400-8009. 843-400-8009 is my cell. You can call or text that or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's my website, www.listingsincharleston.com. Learn more about myself and my team and who we are, what we do. Listen to every version of this show that we've, I think, ever had. We've been doing this since 2012, I think, which is incredible. So listingsincharleston.com. You can also find the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all that fun stuff. So we're going to do something different this coming hour. For those of you that listen to the show on a recurring basis, I don't know what's going to happen, quite honestly. But Sam O'Neill is in the studio with me, and he is my director of marketing for my real estate company and for this show. And so we apparently polled a bunch of people and gathered a bunch of questions. And so these are the questions that you want answers to. I don't know what these questions are. So Sam is going to pull some questions from a hat, and I'm going to do my best to answer them.
Yeah,
so,
hi everybody.
Here we go.
Yeah, we got some questions here asked by the listeners, so very exciting. Brian, let's get after it. I'm going to pull the first one. Okay, this one's just short. It says, Fizbo, when to cut bait and hire an agent. Simple. Fizbo, when to cut bait and hire an agent. Okay.
Well, and did they leave a name?
There's no name on this one. I looked at some of them earlier, and some of them have names, but this one does not.
All right. Well, anonymous for sale by owner. Here's what I would say. When you're selling for sale by, and this is just the experience that I have had over years and years and years of counseling people through this process. The first thing that I want to say is that if you want to sell your home on your own and you have the ability to save some money and save some commission, and it's worth your time to create that savings for you, then more power to you. If you can get it done, that's awesome. And I truly mean that. And when we talk to for sale by owners, we come from contribution. There's so many agents out there that'll say, oh, I got a buyer. When can I come and see your house to see if it's the right fit for them? They don't have a buyer. Most of them don't have a buyer. It's a foot in the door technique. And we talk about that all the time on this program. They don't have they just want to get in front of you and learn more about your situation. And it's so obvious when, a seller puts their home up for sale by owner, and then 90% of their phone calls are from real estate agents, and they're just trying to hammer them into getting a listing. If the agents want the listing, then be upfront and say, hey, I want to be your listing agent. But before that happens, or before you get to the point where you feel like you can't do this on your own anymore, I want to help you sell your house. I want to bring you a buyer. I'll even hold an open house for you and market it so long as we have the agreement that if the people that come through your house want to buy something else, then I get to work with them. That's what I get out of this process. So there's so many different ways that you can partner with real estate agents without having to pay this massive commission that people are so afraid of. But most people don't think that way, because for a lot of for sale by owners, quite honestly, real estate agents are the bad guy. And I think we've kind of painted that picture for ourselves at times. So we try to do something different. But to answer the question more specifically, how long should you try on your own before you decide to hire an agent? That's totally up to you guys. But I think if you're being intelligent about it, look at the days on market in that area. Have you priced your home effectively? Have you marketed it? Do people actually know that your for sale by owner exists? What's the condition of the property like in comparison to the other properties that you're competing against? Are you offering a buyer agent a commission? Because if you're not, 85% of buyers are already represented by real estate agents. So if you are looking for a needle in a haystack and your ability to market the property is incredibly diminished compared to the power of a real estate company that's spending $40,000, $50,000 a month on marketing, it's going to be an uphill battle for you. And so then you have to ask yourself the question of, who are the type of people that are interested in buying a for sale by owner that don't currently have an agent? If they have an agent, that agent's going to want to get paid. And if you're not going to pay them and the buyer has to pay them, then there's no way they're going to pay you fair market value plus 3% to a buyer agent. That just means they're overpaying for the property. They're not going to do it. So you're really left with people that are not working with real estate agents if you choose not to pay any commission. And the majority of those people are the people that want a deal, or they're just so naive about the process that at some point in time between you and the buyer, if you don't have people in your corner that are properly advising you, closing attorneys that are going out of their way to help you in this process, it's going to get sticky. It's going to get kind of dicey pretty quickly. So I would look at, if you're doing everything else the right way, if it's priced appropriately, if it's in good condition, if it's being marketed well, if you're gaining traction from showings and interest from either agents with real buyers, and you know that because those buyers have walked through your house, not an agent walking around and, looking up at the ceiling and saying, oh, yeah, this could work for them. So why are you selling for sale by owner? And then they just go into this whole line of questioning that should hopefully, set off your spidey senses. And so that you realize, okay, well, maybe they're not here with the intent of showing this to a buyer. Maybe they just want my listing. And you, of course, need to make the decision as to whether you want to work with that kind of agent or not. But I'd look at the average days on market. I would have it'd be just like what I would do if I listed the property as your listing agent. If we know that the average number of showings in your area and price range is 6 per month, we want 10 in the first month because it's a new listing. It's fresh to the market. All the people that are on the fence right now, or not on the fence, but kind of waiting on the sideline, hoping that a property like yours hits the market, they're all going to come and see it, and they're going to see it quickly. So if you're not above average within the first 30 days, then either you need to give it just a little bit more time, or more than likely you've kind of missed the mark. But if you're below the average, or you're getting hardly anything, then yeah, you've missed the mark. You need to either make an adjustment and come to the realization that you need an agent's help, reduce the price, and ask yourself the question of how further down the line do I have to go with my price in order to get this home sold? And am I actually saving money? Because that's the number one reason why people want to sell for sale by owner, right? They want to save money. So if you can't save money, or if it's taking you more time, or if it's taking time away from your day job, which is costing you money, or the time that you're investing in selling this property is an opportunity cost to go and make money, then those are the things that people don't typically think about that have a big impact. So, Sam, I want to try and cheat a little bit. Tell me what the next question is, but then we're going to take a break so that I have a second to think about it. Up to you on that, by the way. You don't have to do that.
No. Okay, we'll do it. I pulled one here. This one's a short one. How low is too low for a lowball offer? And this is from Andrew D. How low is too low for a lowball offer?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I could talk to that for a while, actually. Let's talk about that from the buyer's perspective and from the seller's perspective. So let's do that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. I like this. We should be doing this more often. This is Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, you want to learn more about working with my real estate team, my number is 843-400-8009, or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. We'll be right back.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA.
1250 WTMA, the Big Talker.
You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
You're listening to the best of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Welcome back, Charleston, to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. So we're switching it up today. We're just kind of pulling questions out of a hat asked by you folks and loyal listeners of this program. So thank you for that. Hopefully you guys haven't thrown me any curveballs yet. We'll see how things go. Still plenty of time left in the program. But of course, if you want to reach out to me and talk more about working together, aside from doing this show, which I love, it's a passion of mine, we sell real estate throughout the week. And so we'd love the opportunity to work with you if you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home or investing in some real estate. I can be reached at 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. You can learn more about myself and my team and who we are and what kind of properties we sell, and which is everything, by the way. Listen to hundreds of versions of this show. We've been doing this for, I think, going on 8 years now, and a whole bunch more. So listingsincharleston.com. So, Sam, you read the question of how, let me make sure I get this right.
I'll read it. It's from Andrew D, and it's how low is too low for a lowball offer from Andrew D.
Andrew, good question. I think this is probably going to interest a lot of people. That's a good one, Andrew.
Yeah.
But I think what you're looking for is some sort of like percentage. And the reality is that doesn't exist because that's not the proper way of approaching the process, if that makes sense. So here's what I would say. Number one, not every home is priced in conjunction with fair market value. There are plenty of properties that are 10% overpriced, 15% overpriced, 20% overpriced. So if I say 10% as what I would consider to be, anything lower than that is a low ball offer, that would be 10% off of fair market value. But if something's listed for $500,000 and it's worth $450,000 and you offer 10% below that, then you're just offering them what it's worth. So you have to look at each individual property and determine, okay, what's this property actually worth? And of course, that's what the real estate agent does for you. We want to show you the properties that fit your needs. We want to get you, or match your excitement about the property. But we also want to be very diligent in our research to make sure that you're making a wise financial decision. So we see this property, we run the comparables on it, we run our analysis, and we determine what we think this property is worth. So in this example, if it's listed for $500,000, but it's worth $450,000, and we offer them, say, $420,000, if it's worth $450,000 and we offer $420,000, is that a low ball offer? Well, in my opinion, no, that's not a low ball offer. $400,000 would be a low ball offer. But you have to think about it. The sellers think, if, let's say that we offered $420,000, well, $420,000 off of $500,000, that's $80,000. They might consider that to be a low ball offer. But in reality, it's not, because it's not that far off of what that property is worth. So from a buyer's perspective, this is really what you want to do. This is kind of the magic behind this process. And this is going to depend on how long this property has been on the market and how motivated this person is to sell. So both of those pieces of information you should have before you make the offer. Now, you probably might be asking yourselves, well, how do we know how motivated a seller is to sell the property? Well, if you're a real estate agent and you've been doing this for long enough, you know the right questions to ask to kind of uncover that information. Just like the seller wants to know who the buyer is and where they come from and what their story is and do they have a home to sell, and if they walk through it and they like it, are they in a position to buy it, and have they been pre-approved for a mortgage, or are they paying cash? Sellers have all these questions for buyer agents, and this is something that we put people through when they want to see our properties. We want to make sure we pre-qualify our showings. We want to make sure that if somebody is going to leave their house and clean it up and pack up their kids and their dog and they're put it in the car for an hour and drive around aimlessly, I want to make sure that they're doing that for somebody that has a really good reason for being in that house and that would probably buy it if it checks all their boxes. Not, oh, well, we're visiting some family and we live in Florida and we're going to be retiring next year, so we just wanted to gain a sense of, what properties looked like in this area. And next year, if we decide to put our home on the market, then at least we'll know this is an area we'd consider, along with Myrtle Beach and Charlotte. And it's just like the quintessential tire kicker that you have just spent all this time letting walk through your house that will not buy it. So obviously sellers don't want to go through that process, and that's something we make sure doesn't happen. Obviously, no plan is foolproof, but you want, as a buyer, you want to make an offer that's just low enough for them to consider it and respond. If you go too low and they reject it, then you have to figure out how much further up the chain you have to go to solicit that response out of that seller. You don't want to negotiate against yourselves. Now, I realize the irony in saying this, but on the seller side of things, I do not like my sellers to reject offers. And here's why. I don't really care where they start. I just care where they finish. And I have had too many success stories in my career where somebody did make a lowball offer. I had somebody that made I think we had the property listed for like $1.34 million. They offered $1 million. We came off the price $15,000 and the buyer took it. Obviously, in most instances, it's fairly justified for the seller to want to just reject the offer. Be like, come on, don't waste my time. $1 million on a $1.34 million house, that's worth it? No, thank you. Go waste someone else's time. But when we had the conversation and I explained my reasoning and we came back, the buyer took it. I mean, that's an extreme example, but the reality is this. You want to sell the house. The buyer wants to buy the house. Let's get the emotion out of the way. If some people they just can't help it. They just have to make a lowball offer. Maybe it's just so they can put that notch in their belt and be like, okay, well, now we know. Now we know, because everybody hears these glorified stories of somebody getting a property for a considerable amount off of the asking price. You don't know the dynamics of that transaction. You don't know if that property that they bought for $250 was worth, $260 and they only got a $10,000, bonus in the form of equity, but it was listed for $300. It was way overpriced. I mean, there's so many dynamics that go into that. But in this market, if you find a buyer that wants to buy and a seller that wants to sell, yeah, there might be frankly, a little bit of a stupid decision made on either side of the transaction initially. But if you can get over that, take advantage of that, put yourself in the position of power, and go back to the party and say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you putting together an offer on my house, but I'm not going to sell it for that amount. So here's the deal. I'm going to come down $5,000 just to show you that I'm willing to negotiate, but your next offer better be a good one. Otherwise, I will not spend any more of my time on it. Now, if a seller said that to me and I really wanted to buy that house, I'm not a tire kicker, I'm a real buyer, then I'm going to take that seriously and I'm going to say, okay, all right, you caught me. Let's make a deal. And usually that's the way it goes. But when you let emotion get in the way and you say, that is just absurd. That's ridiculous. No way. Tell them to take a hike, pound pavement, pound sand. You don't get anywhere with that. So anyways, hope that answers your question, Andrew. Sam, what's next? We're just pulling questions out of a hat. I don't know what these questions are. Sam does a great job of keeping me on my toes here, both in our real estate office and on this radio show. So apparently he's got just a bunch of questions from people, and I'm doing my best to answer them. Hope I'm doing a good job. But it's one of those interesting shows where I just wanted to switch it up today. So here we go. Well, what's the next one?
I do my best to keep you on your toes, by the way. I appreciate that. Okay, so this one's a long one. It's from Sydney, and it's, what's the average amount of years that people stay in their first home, And what are some things to consider when you're thinking of upgrading to a larger home? And that's from Sydney. So what's the average amount of years people stay in their first home? And what are some things to consider when you're thinking of moving or upgrading to a larger home?
Gotcha. Great question, Sydney. I think that average kind of it goes up and down the scale. I think it's around 7 years. It might be a little shorter than that now, actually, but it ebbs and flows with the market and the dynamics of the market. Obviously, if you look at a few years ago, well, let's just go back. Let's say 10 years ago, you could buy something for an incredibly low price, and then, but the interest rates weren't fantastic, not like they are now. So you could, say 5 years later, you could go and buy something where you have had significant equity appreciation, price appreciation in your own home, and a lower interest rate, meaning there was a financial incentive for you to move. You could buy a more expensive home, but keep your payment the same. As time has gone by and as this market has shifted more and more and more toward a seller's market, I mean, if you look at the numbers in January compared to January in 2019, we basically put the same amount of homes on the market, but sold over 30% more real estate, which cut the inventory down from 4 months supply on average to 3 months supply on average. There's just there's just a shortage of homes right now. And I've been talking about this for years, but it's getting worse. We need people to put their homes on the market. Challenge is they're really having problems finding something to move into, which is a problem created by a shortage of inventory, which is also why we need builders putting inventory out there. That's a separate topic. But what do they need to consider when moving into a larger home? Well, I think that for a lot of people, obviously they start making more money. They economically are more upgraded than they were a few years ago. They can afford it. A lot of people do it out of necessity because they've got a growing family. Think about that. I mean, that house that you bought as a first-time home buyer just ain't going to cut it with 2 kids now, or 3 kids, or 1 kid. My God, I remember how much my life changed when I had a kid. And living in a 2-bed, 2-bath condo would not have been ideal. I mean, you can always make it work, but certainly wouldn't have been ideal. But we wanted to buy a house at that time that we could grow into, and we were okay with staying longer and buying a slightly more expensive house sooner than we anticipated because of the growth, but also because we knew that at the current interest rate, which was the current payment plus the down payment that we had saved, that we could afford it and not stretch ourselves financially if things got a little worse before they got better again. So I think one of the things that people don't take into consideration often enough is what life is going to look like a few years down the road. They're making decisions for the now, not so much as it relates to like their family makeup, but their financial aptitude. Think about all the people out there that, and I know some of them. I'm not going to go there. I almost got myself in trouble, but there are people that live their lives paycheck to paycheck, and the more money they make, they don't get themselves out of that grind because they just spend more of what they make. Every time they start to make more money, they upgrade. The idea of living below their means is not something they've ever had to do before, because every time they get an upgrade, they get a raise, that debt finally gets paid off, then they just put more debt on top of it. And it's a problem that is running rampant throughout America right now. We see it all the time in folks that we talk to that are inquiring about properties we have for sale, and they make good money, but they're so maxed out on their expenses and their debt that whatever they make, they spend. They're not saving or investing it. So I think something to take into consideration is if you're going to move up into a larger home, be realistic about what you want and what you need, but also take into consideration the fact that there can be times where life isn't as good as it is right now. And if you don't have that safety net built up, you don't have that that account that you can rely on if you lose your job or if you're in sales and business is slow, then you're setting yourself up for some real problems. So that's what I would say to that. That's probably the biggest thing that would be in the back of my mind is, are you making decisions for the now? And is your current financial picture a reality several years from now? Or if something happens, how much trouble are you going to be in? Because and maybe that's just me being bearish and the product of me getting into real estate in 2006 as somebody that had just graduated college. And then by the time I'm, 24 years old and I'm one of the top real estate agents in town and I'm helping people through horrific financial situations, loss of job, loss of income, medical bills, can't pay their mortgage payment. They're going to have to relocate their family or turn in the keys to the bank because they just can't afford to live there anymore. And what are they going to do? Those are really tough conversations to have. So I've always been a little more conservative financially in my own personal life. Obviously in business, when you hire me to market your properties, you'll see as we're going through the marketing plan that I am anything but conservative. I invest in many different ways to create exposure, and I invest in processes that make your life as a seller easier and our life as a real estate agent more efficient, so that we can do more and be more available to our clients. So, hope that answers the question. And if you guys want to reach out to me and talk with me personally about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, we'd love to have that conversation with you. My number is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. Or visit my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA.
1250 WTMA.
Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
This is the best of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Now, I'd like to introduce Tony Jamison, my team's listing agent, to the show so that we can have a quick conversation about what's happening in the world of real estate if you're planning on selling your house. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Brian. Glad to be back here.
My pleasure, man. So I wanted to talk about a few things with you that I frankly, I don't think I can talk to too many different agents about on this level, because if you were to hear the conversations that Tony and I have in our office, we get very granular. We get very specific. We monitor the market and, in my opinion, are experts in the market better than just about anybody out there. That's frankly one of the things we pride ourselves on, is we know the market. And Tony, you had a degree in economics when you went to school. And so I want to talk about something really interesting here that ties into that. And it's called Parkinson's Law. It's also called, induced demand in economics. And it essentially states that demand expands as supply expands. So think about it this way. That's why when you widen a highway, when you add more lanes, ultimately it never really fixes traffic flow, right? Because now more people are using it. It's improved the way to the destination, but it's always because there's more at the final destination to get to, which in and of itself creates more people using that highway. Plus people spread out, and it doesn't really fix anything. It's more of a necessity at times. And here's how I kind of equate this to real estate, and I want to tie this in. And so let me kind of get there. Let me set the stage, if I will, or if I may. When you go to a buffet, let's say this buffet has gigantic plates. Because you're at a buffet and it's all you can eat, you're going to fill up that plate. Maybe you go back for seconds. Maybe you go back for thirds. Maybe you're a competitive eater and it's your training ground. Who knows? But when you go to a tapas restaurant, you're eating off of really small plates, right? So let's say you want to lose weight. One of the best tricks out there is just to stop eating on such large plates. From, I think, 1900 until the 1960s or 70s, plates had increased in size like 38%. And so because of that increase, you were eating more food, and because you were eating more food, it essentially equated to you gaining 5 pounds a year just because you're eating off a bigger plate. So if you want to lose weight, reduce the size of your plate. So let me tie this into real estate, because you guys are probably like, what in the world are you talking about, Brian? As our market has continued to appreciate in value, as inventory has gone down in the grand scheme of things, obviously demand has increased, prices have increased. And now we're at a stage in our market where it's very segmented. The first-time home buyer market is still hot. There's still, frankly, a lack of supply that's creating multiple offer situations, and people are paying top dollar for that real estate. Then you have the move-up market that starts to soften a little bit, right? It's kind of like the middle-of-the-road market. And then, of course, you have the luxury market, which, in my opinion, is starting to slow down, unless you have something really unique that a buyer wants. And in those instances, nobody really needs to move and buy a luxury home. They're going to buy something if they want it. And it's just a matter of finding the right buyer or being in the right place at the right time, priced appropriately. But the big challenge we have right now is the value proposition to the buyer. Are we priced attractively enough in comparison to our competition? What does our condition look like in comparison to our competition? And so this whole principle that I'm talking about, this big plate principle versus reducing the size of your plate to lose weight, is that we as an industry right now need to lose some weight, right? We've gotten fat and happy, and as we've gotten fat and happy, we've gotten careless. We're putting properties on the market for more than they should be. Agents are telling sellers, hey, you don't need to worry about doing any of those things to your house because it's going to sell regardless in 2 weeks. And so now we have this perception in our market now where everything is selling super fast. Everything should be selling for what we listed for. And it's just not the case. And so we reduce the size of our plate by offering a more realistic price on the home. We remove the things from the buyer's mentality that causes stress or that's going to cause them to think it's going to cost more money than it actually will to either repair the home or live in the home. And so I wanted to kick this off to you, and sorry that took a while to set the stage, but I wanted to tie that in. And so, Tony, I want you to tell me, with the listings that we're selling and just the activity that we're seeing, in your opinion, right now, what separates the homes that when you go on that appointment and you get your price and your terms agreed upon, what separates a home that's going to sell from a home that you think it's going to sit and it's going to take a lot of extra work?
It's so market dependent, right? If you look at North Mount Pleasant, between $450 and $550, there's pretty much a home on the market every $1,000. Right. So pricing almost in those cases doesn't even matter. What matters there is how attractive is your home to the market, right? Do you have the upgraded kitchen? Do you have the upgraded cabinets? Those types of things are what takes you from just being on the market at a certain price point to being the one that sells, right? So in this market right now, buyers are looking for ease. There's generally a little bit more inventory out there currently that they can go out and purchase. And frankly, buyers are a little bit more on the fence given the fact that they don't know where values are going, right? They're seeing values be a little bit flaky. And so they're a little bit hesitant to jump on making a purchase. And so in order to stand out, you're either going to have to price your property attractively enough in order for it to be the most attractive one out there, or frankly, you're going to have to be the one that has the upgraded kitchen, the $80,000 master bath, those types of things. Now, when we talk about that stuff, you have to analyze the cost of that because, frankly, sometimes it doesn't make sense to do that. It's better to pull it out of your equity, but that's a case-by-case decision.
Right. So when we walk through these homes, Tony and I do, we almost always get the question of what should I be doing to prepare my home to sell it? And I have to tell you that more often than not, I am not going to convince a seller to renovate their property to sell. There is a big difference between renovate and repair. Mm-hmm. Now, if we're talking about repairs, if we're walking through the house and you have the ability to replace something like flooring, and I walk into a bedroom and it's, it's a bedroom that's had the same carpet for 20 years and it's looking pretty worn down.
Right, pretty ragged.
We're now approaching the stage where, in my opinion, it makes more sense to replace the flooring than it does to offer a credit, because you're putting the work on someone else and they're going to look at other homes that already have the flooring replaced.
Absolutely. 2 years ago, you could offer a carpet credit or a paint allowance or whatever the case may be and get away with it. You could get multiple offers, no problem. Now, you really want to be having these things done prior to even putting it on the market so that you beat out the competition. Buyers are they're a little bit more hesitant, a little bit more tentative right now in this current situation.
Right. So it goes back to, let's look at all the homes that aren't selling right now. that they're on the market. They've been on the market longer than they theoretically should be. Some of them are priced well, and it's not so much a pricing issue. It's maybe not even so much a marketing issue, because I know that at times I'm pretty hard on real estate agents on this show, and rightfully so. I'm not going to excuse myself on that, but in some of these instances, it's not so much a marketing issue. It's not so much a quote unquote price issue. What it really is a value proposition issue. Is your home attractive enough to a buyer for them to say, you know what, I want to buy this house over this other home? And that tactic or that statement has to come with a caveat, which is that varies depending upon the type of home, the location of the home, and the price range of that home. Like if it's a $250,000 home in Somerville, let's be honest, it's not that complicated.
Right.
The marketing has to be there. The showings will be there, but you have to be priced appropriately, and you have to have it priced in comparison to the condition and the upgrades of your home. I mean, honestly, and I'm not trying to say anything other than when you do your job well and you've done it for so long, for us, something like that is fairly straightforward. I mean, we do it so much that it's our bread and butter.
Yeah, it's second nature at that point. But what we're seeing right now in this market, and really it's expanded beyond many of the other markets out there. Like, I mean, the North Mount Pleasant mid-range price has been a tough market for a while. But again, 2-3 years ago, you could get away with a whole lot more than you can get away with right now. Right now, you are facing buyers are hesitant to pull the trigger. You got Dave Ramsey out there talking about, it's better to rent right now. Gary Vee's talking about it's better to rent right now. I mean, you have buyers pulling out of the market just structurally, right? They're keeping interest rates low, and that's going to stay down, and that's going to induce demand, sure, but that's a patch, right? And so what we have to do in order to sell properties, and what you as a seller has to do in order to sell your property right now, is you need to make it easy for the buyer. You need to make it easy for them to transact, right? If you're downtown and you happen to be on a street that's not in a flood zone, you need to make sure that information is very well advertised, because that's something that makes it easier for the buyer to purchase, right? It's cheaper. Their payment's lower, right? If you can, there's opportunity zones. If you're on James Island and you happen to be annexed into Charleston, city of Charleston, I mean, those types of things matter. And a lot of agents frankly, let's face it, 90% of the agents out there probably shouldn't be in the business. Yeah. I mean, I think that's nationwide. We could have a much, much longer conversation about that. But these agents need to be doing their job of identifying that information that is going to matter to a buyer and making sure that's marketed. Sometimes that's more important than the pictures. That's more important than the price. That's more important than the number of bedrooms. You need to identify these little pieces of information that are going to make it easy for a buyer to transact and purchase. And
so we're getting into one of the things that I think we do really well, and that is, obviously, we do professional photos on every single one of our listings. And every home has bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and features, right? What we do is we really understand who that buyer is going to be. Who are the people that are going to be interested in a property like that? What are the things that they're going to be interested in? And we are not an expert in every single home in every single neighborhood in the Tri-County area. So that comes with asking the right questions of the seller. Things like, what is it about this community that you love the most? What is it that you think buyers are going to appreciate after having lived here for several years? It's about painting the picture for what that lifestyle is going to look like if you live in that home.
Well, I mean, it's very important to ask sellers that question, because sellers bought the house and buyers are going to be identical to the seller usually. Yeah,
and you can either move toward pleasure or you can move away from pain.
Right.
So you can talk about the things that buyers want to avoid, like really high flood insurance or being in the wind and hail pool or blah, blah, blah. But just kind of bringing this all back full circle to what should a seller be doing right now, using that analogy, you need to be reducing your plate size. You need to be very specific with the questions you ask of the agent that you interview to determine whether they really understand how to sell a property in a market that is shifting.
Yeah.
Because this is not the heyday, frankly, anymore. It is not the put the home on the market with a sign in the yard and a lockbox on the door and the MLS and just wait for people to drive up and make offers. I mean, if that happens now, let's just call it like it is. It's luck.
Absolutely.
We're in the right place at the right time. It's not like I created that scenario. There are a lot we can do to create scenarios like that over time with marketing, but The lucky sale that you get on day one is just is what it is. You're in the right place at the right time.
And when you're interviewing agents, that's why it's very, very important. I mean, usually they say, right, you interview 3 contractors and you throw out the lowest bid and you throw out the highest bid. Frankly, now I'd probably throw out the 2 highest bids and go with the lowest one because this market is shifting, right? And agents are, of course, they have a tendency to, inflate the truth. And yes, we can get that for you. And no, absolutely, we can get this price. As long as you're operating on the same wavelength, right? We understand that we're going to try this price and it might be a higher price and we're going to move it down, whatever the case may be. But you need to be picking the agents that's most realistic with you. And frankly, I've lost listing appointments before because of it, because I'm, not warm and fluffy. I'm very realistic, and this is what the situation is. I'm here to consult with you and give you a guide about what's going on in this market so you can make the right decision. So you don't end up losing money, losing time. The mistakes is where you lose money in real estate. Sometimes the successes aren't really as apparent.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Well, we're talking with Tony Jamison, who is the listing agent for my real estate team. And if you'd like to learn more about selling your home with us, I invite you to give me a call. My cell phone number, which is obviously going to ring off air, is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. You can text that number as well, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. listingsincharleston.com to learn more about who we are and what we do to sell real estate, some of the guarantees that we offer, and the fact that, frankly, we are a no gimmicks guarantee type of company. We're a straight shooter. We're going to tell you not necessarily what you want to hear, but we're going to deliver things in a factual way so that you can win in your transaction.
Find Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on The Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
1250 WTMA.
Expert news and views on the Low Country real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
It's the best of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
I had somebody that asked me this just yesterday, and I've had a few others this year. So let me just take a little time and explain this to you. So let's say that you can't afford to buy a house. You have some poor credit. You need to work on a down payment, whatever the case might be. You see a house that's listed by a rent-to-own company. You get excited. And so you like the fact that you're not just throwing money at a rental. You're moving into a home that you'll one day own. Plus, a portion of your payment can go toward the equity you have in the house while you're waiting to either, save that down payment or wait for your credit score to improve. And it sounds great. And you negotiate up front these deals. So you need to understand what's in store for you. First of all, there are 2 types of contracts. There's a lease option and a lease purchase agreement. You're going to either pay to have the option to buy it, or you are legally agreeing to buy it at some point in the future, and you're just renting it until you can buy it. Here's the challenge. There's no standardized contract for these types of deals, which is what can make them so tricky. But they're going to include things like, monthly rent and maintenance, who maintains it. If you have an option to buy it, how much is that going to cost you? The length of the lease, the closing date, financing, inspection, so on and so forth, just like all your standardized South Carolina purchase and sale agreements go. But unfortunately, rent-to-own agreements are much less regulated. So here's what you need to know. Here are the pros and cons really quickly. The pros are that you get to lock in a price now in a market where prices are still going up. You can avoid competition, right? Because you're under contract to buy the house. You're just renting it for a defined period of time until you buy it. You can build equity in the property, rather than just coming to the table with a large down payment to buy it up front. You can buy yourself some time to improve your credit or increase your down payment. And your payments can be used to improve your credit score, by the way. And you don't have to move into another home. But the cons are this. The option money that you put up is non-refundable. The other thing that could happen is values could go down. The market could shift. There could be some sort of unforeseeable issue that arises. Maybe you lose your job. You're in poor health. That could cause you to lose your option money if you can't move forward with the purchase in a preset amount of time. You could find out that you just don't want to live there. You want to be in a different location. You want to live in a different house. You might have to maintain the property yourself, which in one instance, you're like, okay, well, I've got pride of ownership, which is great for the owner, but you're the one paying for the maintenance that usually a tenant is not responsible for doing, which is why the contract favors the seller so much in these scenarios. So here's my honest opinion. Just wait. Buy it right. Let us help you through that process. In my opinion, rent to own is not the way to go. And I'm happy to talk to anybody that has any questions about that. My number is 400-8009, 843-400-8009, or visit us online at listingsincharleston.com. Thanks so much for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA, and have a great weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com.